about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes, to our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuit!
Everybody loves Hippo
Scary dog!
Pearson at Blurnsville.
Futurama.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Radulich Broadcasting Network premier podcast TV party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is Disenchantment Part 2. This is the second half of a full 20-episode season. The first half came out last year. This second half dropped within the last week or two on Netflix. Joining me tonight, we lovingly call him Old Man Touchy on this network. It's Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
There's nothing loving about what you call me.
Oh, you stop that, Old Man Touchy. Like I've seen one or two pictures of you, but you'll forever now in my mind when I'm thinking about you, you'll be Old Man. I'll be thinking of the vision of Old Man Touchy.
So, completely blind, emaciated, long beard, bald.
But typing on a laptop, covering UFC, yes. I don't know how that works with the blindness, though. I feel like your touchiness mutant power, though, would help with that.
Fair enough.
And mildly putting up with our incessant shenanigans from our Canadian office, ladies and gentlemen, it's David Wright. How do you do, sir?
Hi, everybody. Oh, wait, wrong Matt Groening show. Good news, everyone. Oh, darn, I just can't get this right.
The number of great good news memes. So many.
Yeah, well, actually, I had to quickly come up with that because the moment you started talking about Old Man Touchy, I was getting ready to go.
Okay. Did that have was that the end of the sentence, or I don't?
Yes, that was the joke.
Okay, got a little confused there. Right on. Let's keep going. So we're here to talk, like I said, Disenchantment Part 2. Robert, your memory for detail is better than mine at this, so I'm going to give you the dubious pleasure and honor of regaling us with where we left off with Part 1 and how we got to Part 2.
Well, Part 1 ends after a failed attempt by the Dreamland. Well, we're introduced to our primary three protagonists: the Princess Tiabini, the alcoholic ne'er-do-well princess and daughter of King Zog, and her mother, Dagmar. Dagmar has been turned to stone for the majority of Tiabini's life. Zog remarried, like you do, has another son. And I think if you listen to our previous discussion, we mentioned how this whole thing is basically a metaphor for how teenage girls see the world. That one, her two primary compatriots are the elf Elfo, who we come to find out is only half-elf. We don't know what the other half is yet, though it's hinted in this season it's Ogre. How he became that short, despite being half Ogre, is beyond me, but... And her personal demon, Lucy, who was conjured by a nameless faction that spies on her goings-on occasionally throughout the season. The season ends with Elfo dead. He is shot with a crossbow and dies. A bit of residual elf blood that the whole group, Dreamland, again, tried to abscond with some elves because they want elf blood to complete the amulet of immortality, something along those lines. Using a bit of residual elf blood, not from Elfo, because again, half elf, they're able to activate the amulet, and Tiabini has to make a decision about whether or not she wants to bring Elfo back to life, or her mother, who is cursed and turned to stone. She chooses her mother. Genuinely kind of heartbreaking scene in the first season. Her mother comes back to life. It's revealed that she's the one who actually was trying to kill Zog and inadvertently cursed herself and was turned to stone rather than killing Zog, which is what she meant to do. She unleashes a more potent version of that same curse/poison on the entirety of Dreamland. Everyone except Zog and the human trapped in a pig's body, Merkimer, in Dreamland is turned to stone. Dagmar leaves with Tiabini for her ancestral homeland, Lucy is abducted by persons unknown off-screen, and Elfo's body washes up on shore and is picked up by people we also do not see. That brings us into Season 2.
So, David, going into Part 2 of Season 1 is actually what they're calling it. Knowing where we left off with Bean going off with Dagmar and the entire Dreamland Kingdom turning to stone, say King Zog, what were your expectations? What did you think? Did you have any? What are some of your thoughts?
Well, I was mostly expecting to get some answers as to what was going on and what would happen next, and that's pretty much what the season did.
Part 2 probably can be broken up into 3 sections. There's Aftermath of Part 1, which is 2 or 3 episodes long. The Disenchantress, Stairway to Hell. Disenchantress deals directly with Dagmar and Bean, what Dagmar wanted Bean for in the first place. Stairway to Hell is the mission to bring Elfo back to life, and The Very Thing is the episode where they resolve the kingdom turning to stone. Once they've done that, I was talking to Robert before the show started. I want to see what you think about this, Dave. They do a couple of episodes that, in different ways, add to an overall arc, but mostly just tell serialized stories. There seemingly doesn't seem to be an overall arc. There's an underlying thing about what's in the basement that Levo was looking for. We'll talk about him a little bit. By the way, Levo's like my favorite character in this entire season. A newly introduced character. If nothing else, for the dialogue when he shows up. He was like, "Oh, like I really enjoy your work. What, leaving?" And he just turns around and walks away. He's like, "Ah, the master."
That was a good one.
Yeah.
But the Lonely Heart is a hunter. Our body are elves. The Dreamland job. Love slimy embrace. And then In Her Own Right. So episodes 14 through 18. Again, they deal individually with a lot of character stuff, sort of individualized missions, and then there's sort of a two-parter that concludes the season that deals with a coup d'etat and this other land that is futuristic, steampunk, etc. So let's take these in chunks. I'll go to you first, Dave. The 3-episode arc dealing with the aftermath. What was what was the good, bad, and ugly for you regarding those?
Overall, good was it answered quite a bit of the questions from before, like who were the mysterious watchers. We now know that to be Bean's aunt and uncle. Sort of learning a bit more like what the bigger picture going on is. As for the negatives, is they still don't quite answer all the questions. They still leave you with a bit of, like, what is eventually going on. We know that Bean apparently is the reincarnation of some aristocrat from that side of their family, and for somehow putting on a spiked crown on her head has something to do with making a deal with the devil that they kind of allude to will restore prosperity to the kingdom, but we still don't quite know exactly what's going on there.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit muddled, quite personally. This first episode, the first episode, I liked some of the jokes. I wasn't crazy about the story. For example,
we'll move the brazier. Jerry, you stay here and finish beating yourself. Yes, sir. And then just as they leave, he does in fact continue to punch himself in the face and beg for mercy.
No, my favorite one is like, "Let me lull you to sleep." Shut up. Shut up.
Remember when I used to do this to you as a child?
I think
Jerry was a good addition to the cast. I thought.
I wish they had kept him around. Actually, I really enjoyed him.
Well, they did. He's just in heaven now, and like we had the addition of the character of God.
Yeah.
to the show. That was
you're a sick bastard.
Pretty well done. Yeah, exactly.
If I told you all the suffering was just to make you stronger, I'd say you're a sick.
But whoever the voice actress for Dagmar is, delivered her lines in a very funny deadpan way. But the overall actual story, I was going to pitch it over to you, Robert, if you want to kind of fill in here. I knew they were sacrificing her, and I guess it was to bring back the grandmother, but beyond that, I didn't understand what was happening.
I didn't get the sacrifice thing necessarily.
Well, they mentioned it a few times in the dialogue.
Well, again, it's left very unclear. They want to. The big thing that she kind of finally revolts against is they want to affix this iron crown to her head.
Yeah.
That literally screws into her head.
Yeah.
Like they put it on Jerry, and that's sort of what made him, so we say,
Jerry.
Jerry, him sort of developmentally slowed down.
No, they put that on Jerry, and it's what made Jerry Jerry.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it's something that they try it on different people, and when they finally get the right person, something special will happen. Not necessarily, a sacrifice and they'll wind up dragged down to hell, but again, something. Like, we're going to find the right person eventually, we'll affix the crown to their head. We're unclear on Phase 3, we're unclear on Phase 2, and then Phase 3 Prophet.
Robert, any other thoughts on this first episode? Because the next one is the next two are the fun ones.
No, again, there's some decent stuff in the first episode, but I
was surprised they resolved that as quickly as they did. It's literally one 22-minute episode of them,
and then she absconds.
Right,
Yeah, basically kills
the,
everyone and runs off.
Right, it's like this was the big conclusion to part one. And you would think it would have had a more lasting impact on how season 2 unraveled, and I'm kind of glad it doesn't because I wasn't particularly interested. I mean, like turning the kingdom to stone and betraying them and running off with Bean, that's interesting, and definitely left me hanging on to see what was going to happen in part 2. But then once you find out, you're like, oh well, that's not fun at all, and I'm glad they dealt with it quickly. But am I the only one that was a little shocked?
I'm waiting for this to kind of come up again at the start of Part 3 or whatever we wind up calling it.
Part 1, Season 2.
But yeah, the other country that's name I can't remember. Yeah, they kind of had a bit of a glass jaw as they were kind of taken out a bit too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like the idea of it kind of being sort of this old aristocracy that leading a declining country, and not kind of really just they're actually quite incompetent. Like, the only thing that really makes them a threat is they have magic.
The country is Maru, M-A-R-U.
Thank you.
We also get Una kind of...
Isn't that where Robert Whittaker's from?
I'm going to hit you with something. I don't know what it's going to be.
You missed an opportunity to tell me to go beat myself in a corner.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
But like the bit where Bean has kind of discovered what's going on, and they're all like hunting her down to kill/sacrifice her, and she's just running circles around them because she's actually been in death-defying situations before and kind of just knows how to.
She's got Lucy at that point too to help her out.
Dude, yeah, Lucy has some of the best lines this entire. I'm going to go with season for clarity, for just easier language sake.
When they actually go to hell and we kind of see Lucy in his element and just like manipulating the system down there, that was just priceless.
Even before that, it was like Lucy.
They tried to pickle me in alcohol, but about an hour ago I drank it all.
Jerry's shaking up. He's like, "Wee!" But Bean has got this kind of heartfelt, dramatic, like, "I'm not like you, Mom. I'm not a murderer." Lucy looks at her like, "You've got quite the body count you've racked up."
Yeah.
At which point, like,
not intentionally.
I laughed so hard. I love the setup as that candle just kind of falls slowly down the stairs, and none of them. And here's the thing about it: it doesn't take so long that you kind of go, okay, why is no one trying to stop this thing? But it's not so fast that the joke is completely lost. It actually does kind of fall at that perfect rate when we've all been there, where you drop something and you have the clarity to see it.
Yeah.
You know it's going to fall, but you also know there's no way you're going to be able to stop it. And they captured that moment. And then, it hits all the embalming for liquid and giant explosion. And then, Lucy, for someone who's not a murderer, you've got quite a body. And, like, as you think about it, the first time we see her, she inadvertently tricks this prince into stabbing his head through this, through a...
heart, I think it was. It was a chest wound, I believe.
No, it was his head. He leans down to pick up the ring and just impales his head on that sword.
I'd have to watch it again, but okay, I'll take your word for it. But again, not intentional.
Because he doesn't die, but he just kind of winds up hanging out there, not able to move for fear of actually dying.
So, all right, so let's move on to episode 2, which is they get the idea to have Elfo be condemned to hell. He's currently in heaven, and
having a gay old time.
Indeed. His interactions with God are really funny. That like God can't take him seriously. It's like he's insulting God, and God's just like, no, that's not enough. It's when he insults Jerry that it's like, hey.
He keeps trying to say these things, and God's just like, oh, thank you for taking me down a peg. I need that from time to time.
So
no, I'm talking with God, not you, dum-dum. Dum-dum! Like, he doesn't even deeply insult Jerry as God.
So the strategy here is they're going to have Elfo get condemned to hell. That way, and then they're going to go to hell themselves, rescue Elfo. Lucy reveals after a series of shenanigans, which we have to talk about because they're funny shenanigans, that souls and bodies are attracted to one another, and so the body will act as a magnet and will pull them, will pull the soul to itself, so they'll be able to find it wherever it is in this world, and she'll be able to put the soul back into the body. But it's a ticking clock kind of a thing. They've only got X amount of time before his soul will expire once it leaves hell. So that's the setup. What I loved about this episode, and then I'll pitch it over to you guys, is how great Lucy is at convincing everybody around him what a shithead he is so that he can execute his plan, and how it all worked out so well. It's like he had to sell out Bean to get his wings because he needs the wings to fly out of there. And then, and then he
has to sell them out a second time to gain enough power to actually he needs the wings.
Right.
Then he discovers in mid-flight, oh boy, you guys are too fat and I'm too weak.
Well, no, the other side of that is...
those of you listening at home who have not watched the season yet, demons are apparently promoted based on how terrible they are to other people.
That makes
so
sense.
The worst things that Lucy does to being an Elfo, the more power he gets given, and then as a result he has to keep on treating them worse and worse to get stronger and stronger so he can actually rescue them.
Yeah, it's like high finance or politics in the United States. It's fine. It all works the same way. Yeah, Anyway.
Not exclusive to the United States, unfortunately.
All right. Well, I didn't want to speak on behalf of other countries. That's what we have you for.
I'll speak on behalf of Canada. You guys elected Justin Trudeau.
Moving on. So the direct thing that he has to deal with is, because they would have made it with just his little baby wings, but then they're confronted by, I think it's Asmodeus.
Something like that.
Yeah, one of the higher level demons named in the Bible. And
I love Lucy's response is, what are you doing? They're confronted. What are you doing? Oh, I just wanted them to have a glimmer of hope before I betrayed them again. He drops them towards lava.
Well, we were talking before the podcast started about how time works. And they fell for a long time. I mean, it's pretty amazing he caught them. I mean, I regret it's a fictional cartoon, but I mean, there's a full minute and a half, and they didn't fall that far. But whatever, it's fine. But yeah, he sells them out again. He drops both of them, and so he's promoted. What I liked about this, so the first time he does it, they're both. And again, the show does a really good job of mixing kind of heartfelt, dramatic moments with really funny stuff. So you have Elfo, who does not yet know that Bean chose her mother over saving his life when she had the opportunity to raise him from the dead. And so now he's heartbroken because he loves Bean, and he thought Bean loved him.
That was so... when I say great, I don't mean like I was gleefully enjoying this character's misery. I mean, it was a genuinely great moment.
Yeah. To
watch that kind of heartbreak. Elfo sees this, and his heart's broken. And when they finally, when they finally consign Bean, her worst moment is watching him watch that.
Right, and it's a really well done bit, and so they kind of find common ground again when they both realize what a shit Lucy is, and they're like, and as a Jew, I do enjoy a good use of the word schmuck, and and they're calling
again to those of you at home in hell, the eternal torture is strapping you to a chair, Clockwork Orange style, and making you watch your most painful memory over and over and over again
with popcorn just out of reach, which is a great gag.
Yes.
So anyway,
it's almost like Greek torture. Yeah.
Which is apparently, I imagine that's only part of, if that's not going to be your personal hell, they'll come up with something else. But for a lot of people, that is up there.
And for the purposes of moving this along, that's all you see. So anyway, so they have a come together moment, and they're calling Lucy schmuckface, and then he comes down and he was like, it was part of, he sort of accepts the insult, but he was like, it was part of my plan. It had to happen for us to get to where we are right now. Then the same pattern repeats itself, but in doing so, in escaping, Lucy is told he will lose his immortality and his wings, and he will basically one of the great running gags of this show is that people who don't know what Lucy is keep referring to him as a cat.
Yep.
And that's basically what he becomes. He's still a demon, but for all intents and purposes, he's just this little black thing following Lucy around. Following Bean around. He has no more magic powers.
Yeah, he's like a cat, but evil and heartless. Oh, wait, never mind.
Yeah, he's just sort of a sociopathic cat. So anyway,
but you repeat yourself.
Yes, sorry for being redundant and saying the same thing twice. Anyway, so they escape hell. They put the soul back in Elfo. There's a great line about drinking. I can't remember the exact words the mermaids use, but the joke is whatever it is they're drinking, it's sangria. Which,
nectar of the gods.
Yes,
sangria.
Well, I had a good laugh at that because a lot of the women I know that are my wife's friends, and my wife included, big fans of the sangria. So I just the personal connection to that made me laugh. But I've been talking for a while trying to get through this sort of plot summary. Robert, what did you think of? I thought this episode was great. I really thought, in terms of sort of building adventure and giving them something to do and kind of weighing the humor against the heartfelt, I thought they did an excellent job with this episode.
Yeah. Completely agreed. There's some laughs. There's some great visual. There's some purely great artistic animation. When they're trying to break into the fortress that has the Book of the Damned, there's some really great stuff as they kind of break the laws of physics because you're in hell. The Euclidean geometry and the laws that govern our reality would not necessarily apply there. So they wind up doing a very MC Escher-esque style of stuff that they're running over, and it's kind of great. It's really nice to look at. You get some genuinely great heartfelt stuff. You get some gags. You get them meeting mermaids who are going to eat Elfo.
Why do I have olives in my ears? It's good stuff.
Thank you for putting oil on my body and helping it stay fresh. That was a marinade. We're going to eat you in 3 more days.
Yes, it was a merry day.
It was a merry day. Nice to meet you again. Why do I have olives in my ears?
So good. David, what'd you think of Stairway to Hell?
Yeah, just great episode. It kind of expands the world. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Heaven and Hell in future episodes.
Can I just say the running gag about the lack of handrails on the stairs?
Yeah, that was good stuff. All right, so the third episode deals with kind of closing out this chapter of the story, restoring the kingdom, getting back to at least the status quo so that they can push the plot forward, do new things, and bring out new characters, etc. This is sort of the conclusion to a very long story arc. We meet a group of pirates. Their captain, who we'll find out is an elf named Levo, who, you guessed it, left. They are...
Elves are really big on specialization.
Yeah. It's not totally firmly established. The reason why Levo won't interact with the crew anymore is why exactly. It's sort of inferred that there's something that he's looking for that he realizes is in Dreamland, and that kind of breaks him out of his stupor. But between the first and this episode, we are reintroduced to Una, who is the dethroned queen of Dreamland from another fish kingdom of some sort, and she ends up basically inserting herself as the new captain. This whole thing leads to basically, Bean and Elfo and Lucy sail back to Dreamland. They confront the dad, and the dad at first is throwing stone bread at them. Oh no, my bread! That's great.
We get another great line very in the near future. I think it's in this same episode. I could be mistaken. When they realize that we still have the amulet, so all we need is some elf blood, and we can actually de-stone everyone. So Levo helps. He makes some cryptic intimations to the leader of the elves that there's something in Dreamland they want, and the elves become accommodating. But his initial thing with the pirates is, sure, I'll give you all of our treasure, but the kingdom's been raided a little bit in the meantime. One of the ongoing gags throughout the first 2 episodes that helps break up that singular story is looking at King Zog and what he's doing in Dreamland, as him and Merkimer, this pig with the mind of a man inside of it for some reason. Or I forget. There was a whole thing about that in season 1. I just can't remember the details. What they're getting up to, and they get raided by a group of some kind of barbarians. They kidnap Merkimer and are going to kill him, and Zog tries to go on the warpath, but winds up lamenting that he's too old and fat, and then smells Merkimer cooking and goes, bacon, which he hasn't had to eat, which I think he mentions, like, I've been eating gravel for the last 3 days because I've run out of everything else.
Yeah.
The smell of bacon inspires a man to acts of heroism that you wouldn't imagine, which is a very true thing.
I'd call it more bloodlust than heroism, but whatever works.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
How about bacon lust? Can we agree on that?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
All right, then.
So anyway, the point being, he's back, and they're looking through what's left of the treasure, and he tells Bean quietly, yeah, we don't got no more treasure. And oh, stone socks. Why are these in a chest? Bean looks at her father and goes, I thought the spell only turned living things to stone. And Zog's response is just, you don't know my socks.
There's an even better line than that, though. When he's talking, that's separate from the earlier conversation about we really don't have any treasure to give, but he says something like, we're going to have to half-ass this in a very dangerous fashion, and she just sort of looks at him lovingly and goes, that's our way.
Yeah,
Yep.
It's the Dreamland way.
Which I thought was great.
Yeah, I think I liked it more when Bean's trying to convince Zog that she's not working against him, and she just says, like as a kid you're kind of like, your mind is the combination of your parents, so like my mom's like an evil witch, and my dad, yeah, I'm pretty much a nutter.
Yep, they reconciled. That was the whole point of it. It's the great thing about this show being as short as it is they don't really drag things out for too long. So they kind of resolve their issues in one scene, and then they're on to other stuff. And at the end of the day, there's a great interaction with the king and the elves from fallout from the first part of the season. But ultimately, the elves come and they unstone everybody. The water flows freely. Una takes off with the pirates, and they remembered they had a son named Derek, who at this point has not been in the show this season. He's up in the tower eating seagulls.
Can I just say, his whole plan of, I'll use a dead rat to lure these birds to my window where I will then beat them with a club and then cook those. Genius. Like, this kid might be kind of a dunce in many respects, but he made out better than his old man when it came to living in that situation.
Yes, we'll see more of the wisdom of Derek later on.
So overall, I'll pitch it to you first, Winfree. Episodes 11, 12, and 13, this arc that closes out the first season storyline of Dagmar's betrayal, what her ultimate purpose was for being, and the resolution. What did you think?
It's fine. I liked it. It's a good way to wrap things up. Like you said, this show doesn't drag things out a whole lot. If there is a downside to that, and there is, some of the stuff doesn't get as much time to breathe as I would like, but it also does prevent a lot of stuff that we all know is inevitable from taking forever to finally get there. So, again, it's a good 3-episode arc. It's a good way to kind of round things back out, and it's interesting because while they do kind of get back to the status quo, it's also very much not the status quo.
Yeah, we talked about this before the show started proper, just in sort of, discussing what's on the schedule and what did you think of this or that. And I want to get David's opinion on this because you and I kind of hashed this out earlier. But I said this season felt like it finally found its legs. Like, the first season dealt with so much world building and sort of making fun of the fantasy genre, and it kind of felt a little one note. Like, it felt like parts of... I referenced The Simpsons to you personally, Winfree, and I said it took a few years for The Simpsons to figure out that it was social commentary rather than sort of the not making fun of the American family or the family sitcom. And I can't say this with 100% certainty. So, David, fill in for me if you think I'm wrong about this. But I feel like Futurama kind of went through that same transition where they were making fun of the sci-fi genre, and then it just became jokes about contemporary life in a sci-fi setting. And it too kind of found its groove. This one does it at like warp speed because, as I said, they get away from the making fun of the fantasy genre really quickly, and then it's just about dealing with the characters, having fun with those characters, putting them in kind of fun situations. But also, there's a lot of jokes this season, singular jokes peppered about, making fun of contemporary life and society. What's your reaction to that, David?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Like with Futurama, it was kind of hard to pinpoint sort of the switching point for me. But yeah, it's there's only so many jokes you can make at a genre's expense. I mean, it's funny, but to have a long running show, you actually need to have a story that's doing something and like characters that are fleshed out that the audience is actually interested in, like seeing more of. And I think that like in the first half of the season, or we'll call it first season, it was very much that they're still trying to sort of figure out the dynamics between the characters and how things are all going to fit, and the actors are easing into the roles, and it really does sort of feel, especially in those middle standalone episodes, that they've really kind of figured out the dynamics. Like Lucy, Elfo, and Bean are all getting along well together. They've kind of dropped the Bean being the rebellious teen that Zog's always trying to control, and they've just kind of learned to accept each other for who they are and have a much better relationship.
Yeah, they quit doing the one note joke with her about she's a barfly, and they started giving her more of a personality.
Yeah, I mean there is, like, even though those episodes are standalone, which we'll get to, is they are still dealing with some of the aftermath from what happened between seasons. And that's sort of starting to spur a bit of character growth for them. Like Bean eventually realizes that, like pretty much everything in my life seems to be, related to drinking or having gone drinking, and like there's really nothing else to me other than that.
Robert, you seem like you're chomping at the bit here, so have at it.
Sorry if I gave off that impression.
It felt like you kept trying to talk and were trying to be respectful of David. Did I mistake your courtesy for you just breathing?
Probably.
Nice.
Okay. I think the only thing I wanted to mention, what Futurama had going for it in that regard, first of all, this might sound weird, but it's generalized uncertainty. Futurama never... There's so many seasons of Futurama that actually they weren't sure if they were going to be renewed. Mm-hmm. So they tried to end things on a note that could be a viable ending for the series. And and I think at least partially related to that, Futurama winds up with a much more nuanced, fleshed out character relationship between all the primary characters. Much more so than, again, much as I love even, peak Simpsons. And there is certainly nuance to that in many respects, but it's a lot of similar nuance,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, also, to butt in here, like with the Simpsons, they are a family. Yeah. So you already know that dynamic. They're a family. Whereas with Futurama, like other than Farnsworth and Fry, no one's related to each other, so you have a lot more variety in the relationships that can be formed.
I think also there was a focus switch with Simpsons, a very famous focus switch, because in the beginning Bart was the focus of the show, and then people realized through either criticism...
Homer's the most interesting character.
Homer's the funny one. Homer's the one that the audience is really interested in. No one really cared about Bart.
Well, they relate to Homer in that he's just a guy trying to get back to the couch.
Right. So I think Futurama also kind of went through that, where Fry is somebody I think the audience relates to in terms of he's kind of the Luke Skywalker. This is your person taking you through this world, but they realize I can't remember what the squid's name is.
Zoidberg.
Like Zoidberg's hysterical, and they gave him more, and the Fry's grandson, whoever
technically
Farnsworth.
Farnsworth gets more stuff. They give Leela gets some of the most. For as much as Fry's episodes, and there's a few in particular that I could name but won't. For as much as Fry's episodes are the ones that'll get your waterworks going on occasion. I mean, look, if you don't watch like Luck of the Fryish or Jurassic Bark and get choked up a little bit, you have no soul. But they give Leela a lot of, like, she's the one with a genuine kind of character arc as far as it relates to the world. I mean, Fry's is the fish out of water. Mm-hmm. Leela is desperately trying to figure out who she is in this world because she thinks she's an alien. Turns out she's a mutant.
And you can only kind of do, like, Fry learns about the future so many times before he's kind of figured it out and knows how to function in
right. And for those people like, why are we going on about Futurama? Because that's the parallel for this show. Is it starts off as sort of satire. Oof, that's the word I was looking for earlier. Parody. It started as a parody of the fantasy genre. So, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, that sort of thing, high fantasy. It's like, okay, well, let's take the piss out of it. But, and Futurama, again, was that same thing. And so there's a lot of really close parallels there. But after a while, as we've said, taking the piss out of something is only going to get you so far. And then you have to figure out what is this show beyond a parody of a genre. So getting back to Disenchantment, this second half of the season is really where they did a lot of great character stuff. So going forward, and I guess I don't want to necessarily do strict episode by episode, but we have The Lonely Heart is a Hunter, which is a great Zog episode because and I'll tell you what, Zog became a lot more likable in the second half than he was in the first half because he's kind of borderline villainous the first.
I have to. If I may, just about Zog as far as this goes. I know we don't want to go episode by episode, but again, when we mentioned that the first 10 episodes, most of it can just be viewed as kind of like an allegory for a teenage girl's view on the world.
Bear in mind, everyone, that no one on this show is or has been a teenage girl, to my knowledge.
Nope. I don't even have a teenage girl living in this house.
Yet.
It's happening soon, but not
be
yet.
Strong, man. Be strong. We're
look, insert joke about how dare you assume my gender and age.
Can we not?
Hence the insert joke.
That was the to my knowledge part of that statement. Just covering those bases. I know you're listening, Internet.
No one's listening.
Terrific.
Anyway.
That's not true. I've seen the numbers.
So, point being, the first few episodes, her father, he's kind of trying to, he's presented very villainous. He keeps trying to get Bean to do stuff that she doesn't want to do, and he keeps trying to marry her off, and she keeps like, I don't want to get married, much less to someone for political reasons. And initially, you do kind of take Bean's side until you get about 8 episodes in and you realize Bean's a giant shithead. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do that. Okay, all you want to do is get drunk.
Yeah, it's rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's not so much there's so much more to life. I don't want to just be a damsel in a tower for a political marriage sort of thing. It's
not that Zog is completely right. He isn't. He presents his case badly, and there's a few different things that he tries to get her to do that, like, no, okay, she doesn't want to get married. She shouldn't be forced to get married. We can all largely agree with this. But when he's like, okay, I'm sick of supporting your freeloading. If you want to get drunk, you're going to have to find a job and pay for it. Like, you know what? He's not wrong. And then towards the end of the first 10 episodes, when she's like, she kind of curses him out after Elfo dies. Like, you just want the amulet so you can live and be king forever. He's like, oh, sweetie, no. I wanted to bring your mother back. She was the love of my life. And that's when he kind of reveals that the statue of her that she's kind of assumed was just an in memoriam thing is actually her mother after she was turned to stone via some kind of petrification potion.
Yeah, so once we get Zog's sort of backstory and realize that he wasn't really someone who wanted to be king in the first place. Again, he's more of a Robert Baratheon type character where he was just this great warrior who was just, fine, get up, drink, kill people, drink, wench, go to bed, get up, rinse, repeat, except no rinsing. But because he fell in love with this woman, he had to kind of achieve a higher social status and became king. And So we see him like he's trying to do his best. It's just the type of person with his background is he does not have the tools to do that. He doesn't understand diplomacy or how to be civil. He's just like a brute. He solves most of his problems by swinging at them with an axe, and that's not really a good strategy for being a king.
So and then here again, when we get to the point is when we get to this we get some of his backstory. And he's still not completely sympathetic. Again, he's still a brute. There's still there's elements of his character that are still intact, but he gets more context and nuance.
He's got a self-serving streak to him, but it's tempered with it's tempered with he's kind of the lovable oaf, and so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of those competing personality traits. So where it's like, so this is a great episode.
Yeah, this episode where, again, his first wife came back, that was brought back to life, turned out to be the one trying to kill him, and absconded with their daughter and turned his whole kingdom to stone, so that didn't work out. His second wife, Una, decided it wasn't working out. They get divorced. She leaves their son with him and goes off to be a pirate. Derek's not that bad.
Oh no, I wasn't talking about Derek. It was just more like her relationship with Zog. Like I think Zog's kind of having to confront that he is somewhat of the architect of his own misfortune.
Yeah, she had every right to leave him. He betrayed her first. Let's get that straight.
She had your first wife came back and you immediately tried to lock me in a tower. Yeah, no, we're done.
Yeah,
okay, fair enough.
I'm on Una's side here.
And it turns out she's an evil sorceress. Now you want me back.
So what's great?
There's actually a great moment from Bean at that point when she realizes, my alien lizard fish mother was the nice one.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the closest thing I've had to proper mothering has actually been from my father.
So what's great about this episode is he's like swearing off women. He's burnt, and you can for all his bumbling and sort of oafish behavior. Again, there's a lot of Homer in him. It's still sad to see him kind of lonely and be like, you know what? I'm just gonna go hunt, and I don't want to deal with women. And then he finds this woman who is a bear when she has her skin on, and she's a woman when she doesn't have it off. But her natural state is to be this bear, or at least that's what she tells him. And she's great, and she serves the purpose of sort of reawakening that part of his soul he now knows he can love again, which he didn't think he could, because the two relationships he had worked out so poorly. And he falls back on old shitty behavior when he tries to hide her bearskin because he doesn't want her to leave, and she's like, I eventually need to go back and be a bear. And he's like, well, not if I hide your skin. And then he realizes, well, he's a bag of shit, and he gives it back to her, and he's in the middle of making a speech, and she's fucked off and gone back to the woods when he turns around. But
she did wave.
But what I liked about this is, like I said, it was on balance a great way to show you Zog's not perfect. Zog, again, is very oaferish, very Homerish, but there's a lovable part to him to where you can be sympathetic.
Yeah, he's not that bad of a guy, and yeah, I forget the name of the woman that he meets, but yeah, it's kind of this is like, I think. Yeah, Ursula. Thanks. We'll run with that. But yeah, if he hadn't become king, this would have been like the perfect woman for him. Just absolutely not.
He would have stayed in the forest with her. Like there would be no castle.
Oh yeah, he would have pretty much just stripped down and lived as a bear with her, and he would have probably lived a very happy life.
By the way, I love it when
as Mark is fond of saying, he would have gone into the woods to live deliberately.
Yeah. I didn't say it. Henry David Thoreau did, but let's not belabor the point.
Zog is kind of characterized by his selfishness, especially in the first season, and you kind of you only really know this until you actually really love someone, but you kind of realize that their happiness is above your own happiness. Yeah, he's just kind of that moment that he realized that yes, having her around makes me feel good, but seeing her suffering in this environment that is not hers, that she can't adapt to, is I cannot do this to her for my own sake of how good I feel being with her. I have to let her go to live the life she's meant to lead.
Right. He takes to fathering being a king and being a lover and a husband all the same way. 2 left feet. He gets there,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of stumbling along the way, stepping on feet, etc. The next episode, Our Bodies, Our Elves. First of all, this was gross.
Oh, yeah.
Them.
Well, look, I actually like the setup of this is the one day a year that the people actually wash their clothing.
Yeah,
It's actually a great gag, and oh no, everyone clearly only has one garment because they always wear the same thing.
The
Yeah,
elves'
this is
reaction.
kind of
The elves'
thing.
reaction to the dirty water was funny, but when they actually started, I can't actually talk about it without making myself sick, so I'm going to shut up after this.
When they start, oh hey, bathing and then drinking this
I'm good.
disgusting gray water.
Yeah, because as much as they poke fun at the fantasy genre, they also kind of poke fun at sort of medieval society and how people lived back then. And yeah, it was, you didn't really bathe regularly because, we didn't have the germ theory of disease at this time.
Or plumbing.
Yeah, or plumbing. Yeah. Sewers, sewers are great, guys. Like, you might not think much about them now, but, like, seriously, we all owe our lives to the sewer.
And let's be fair, untreated water can be more dangerous than not bathing. So the ability to actually purify water fairly consistently. Like, again, I've seen, like, I've done a lot of camping, and there's a lot of lakes I've seen that I would not choose to wash myself in for very specific reasons.
Yeah, when they say all natural water, well, cryptosporidium is all natural, guys.
So
it is.
The only thing I got out of this, other than the gross elf drinking the water thing, was this is where we learned that Elfo may or may not be part ogre. Other than that, this is just, hey, we've had 3 episodes that dealt with a very specific thing, 1 episode that was kind of heartfelt dealing with Zog. It's been a while since Bean fucked off on an adventure. Let's do that. And that's kind of what this episode is. I
mean, the introduction of the riff on Quint's famous introduction from Jaws was kind of funny.
Yeah. Was it just me, or did that guy kind of remind you of Chris Pratt, at least in appearance?
Fair enough. I think my favorite line from this was at the end after they bring back the legend berries and cure all the elves, and it takes Pops a little bit longer, and Elfo laments a few things and confesses, and he actually says to Pops, even though your stories went long and didn't actually go, like he says some of the things that you don't really say to people, but he is very clearly doing it in an affectionate manner. Like, even though you had these quirks and these few annoying things, you were still good to me, and I still loved you, and I'm sorry you're gone. And the only thing Pops takes away from this is these somewhat negative things, and he sits up and goes, "You know what? I'm glad I stole your college fund."
Yeah.
Next one was the Dreamland job, which was basically Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
This is now what I liked about this, and I think this might have been the one where I was starting to think like there's some degree of social commentary here because Zog is taking advantage of the elves. He's overtaxing them, trying to rebuild his coffers, and Bean, after I think like spending time with the elves, realizes just how much he's taking. This is again one of those things where Zog doesn't always stay on the right side of moral, and Bean is sort of there to counteract him. Because despite her sort of drunken chicanery, she has a fairly decent moral compass. And so they've decided they're going to steal the gold and give it back to the elves. And this involves a fairly complicated Ocean's 11 type heist from the castle. This is also, I think, when Lucy buys the bar. And I'll tell you, Lucy as the bar owner is the best thing about this season to me. He's hilarious.
Yeah, he's great in that role.
And other than feeding in another episode where he's feeding, he's feeding Zog because Zog wants gout. They gave
that
him
so good.
They gave him the perfect thing to do because for the longest time he was just following Bean around, cracking wise and encouraging her to do bad things. And finally, he was like, okay, well, they've run that joke into the ground. What else do you do with this character? Because he's too funny to lose, but you've beat the one thing he was doing to death. So then they gave him this bar, and he's like the perfect shitty bartender. It's great. I loved Lucy in the bar.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. The fact that he wins it in an arm wrestling contest, that he wins because he pokes the human in the eye with his tail right before they start.
That's good stuff. David, anything else about the Ocean's 11, the Dreamland job?
Not too much. Again, we're sort of seeing Zog softening up a bit, and yeah, it just kind of goes to he's not necessarily evil. He just doesn't quite grasp the subtleties of rule. Like it's just like I don't have money, I need more money. Tax everyone. Okay, I got money. Now let's just make sure nobody steals the money without kind of realizing that if you take too much from the people, they kind of don't have enough to live off of, and they get angry, and bad things go from there.
I'm going to ask a question. And I think when I do, Robert's going to punch his computer. But you guys know me, and I'm not asking in a let's criticize the man kind of way. But do you think Matt Groening purposely made Zog kind of a, what's the word here, a symbol for President Trump? And I say that because as you were talking about the description of, like, he comes up with the most oafish, simplest, direct, not always the right solution. It's like, this is what moderately fair criticism of the president is. And I'm wondering if Groening did that on purpose. I'll throw it to you first, Mr. Canadian.
Oh, geez. When was the first show made in relation to Trump's presidency, I guess, is the biggest question.
It aired, the first season aired in 2018. Trump was elected in 2016.
Okay, so, yeah, Trump would definitely be a thing. I mean, if it is, it's a genius move in that he's made Zog not obviously a Trump analog, if that is what he's going for, unlike pretty much every other thing that Hollywood and the TV industry produces.
Can I also say that if he is a stand-in for Zog, I think he's probably the fairest stand-in for Zog. He's standing for Trump.
Okay, real quick. I just need to read the development link so we have a timeline here. The series is animated by Rough Draft Studios, the same studio that worked on Futurama. In July of 2017, it was announced that rapper Briggs is part of the writing team for the series. John DiMaggio has described the series as the offspring of The Simpsons and Game of Thrones. So you figure it started in development in 2017, and by that point he was already president.
Yeah, I imagine that any of the major writing would have been done at least when he was the nominee for the Republican side of things in 15/16.
Yeah, I would say that any sort of comparisons to Trump are done in the broadest of strokes.
Yeah, it's very broad, and again, I think it's probably amongst the fairest kind of send-ups of Trump that we've seen, in that it is critical, but it's not unfair. It's not scathing. It's not one note, being deliberately obtuse about it. It's just, if he is a stand-in, he is the best stand-in for Trump that has been put to the page/screen in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I would say it's actually a very inventive sort of send-up of Trump, as opposed to when they directly did it on Family Guy, and he literally grabs Meg by the vagina. They did it in a funny way. They do it kind of off camera.
Hold on. That's not possible. It's Family Guy. There's nothing funny about Family Guy.
All right, I'll rephrase. They did it. They did it in a way.
In all seriousness, Family Guy posts like season 5, just nothing.
So the scene so they did an episode where Peter becomes the press secretary for Donald Trump. So
of course.
So at one point, Meg is left alone with Trump, and she's talking. She's just rambling on, and the camera sort of pans in on Trump, and his hand goes beneath the camera shot, and then you just hear a horn honking, which obviously is him grabbing her by the vagina, because boy howdy have we not been able to get over that fucking statement in this culture, in this country. So this, I think, so there's that, which is sort of hits you over the head with a fucking hammer humor, and then there's this, which is a lot more subtle, where
it's like someone can have it's like someone can have the best of intentions but just not really know how to do things. Perhaps.
Well, that's a great description of Family Guy.
I'm speaking in very broad terms here, and not directly referencing anyone in particular. And keep funding the Orville Family Guy.
Oh, shut up, Robert.
That's your job. Be that fountain of infinite money that Seth MacFarlane can use to actually produce worthwhile content for humanity.
I will say this: if I have to choose between the Orville and Family Guy, that's a no-brainer. It will be the Orville, and I will just blind myself.
Terrific. Anything else on the Dreamland job? Nope. Great. I hate the next episode. Love Slimy Embrace.
Oh, you are a terrible person.
I fucking hated this episode. I couldn't wait for it to be over. Derek sort of nursing, nannying a octopus who then falls in love with him. I'm like, boy, am I not interested. And I know that this whole episode is a setup to make Derek and Bean solidify their relationship, tighten it up, so that later on, when there's a break in the family, you feel something when Derek basically betrays her. I get that. The show is really, really good about setting things up in one episode, paying it off in another. It's very well written in that respect. There's a lot of great craft work here. I just don't think Derek's that interesting of a character. He has funny gag lines, but other than that, he's a bit of a drip, and I don't really care about his character. Why am I wrong?
I'm waiting to see the second. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop with him still.
Yeah, more on Derek later when we get to the end of the season. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, because in the first season, he's only seen infrequently. I think he has maybe a dozen lines throughout the entire 10 episodes. He exists, but he's not really a thing.
Yeah, he's a spoiled rich kid that lives in a bubble sort of thing.
Here, they actually kind of make fun of themselves for that a little bit. I almost imagine there was a point in the writer's room when they went, hey, we haven't done anything with Derek in 8 episodes. And they all went, oh, crap, Derek. And they just kind of wrote that into our interaction between Zog and Una. But he's going to become more important, so you have to actually introduce us to him in some respects.
Yeah, flesh out him and Bean a little more.
I'm not mad at crafting an episode that featured him regardless of my particular interest in him. But I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this was a great episode and he's a great character when that's not how I feel. I understand the necessity of it.
I don't think he's a great character yet. He might wind up not being one. Again, I'm leaving that a bit open-ended because there's more material to come. But this episode kind of got me to feel for him a little bit in some way. Like, no one wants to be around this guy. And to an extent, some of that's on him being a little bit, who he is. Like, some of that's on you, man. But at the same time, some of it's not. Some of it's on just people not being willing to kind of see beyond him being a little bit awkward.
Yeah, the episode itself, there's not much there. It's like, Bean's a jerk to Darren. She goes off. He, says he'll be friends with this, one-eyed octopus baby in a tidal pool. And then next scene, the octopus is now frickin' huge and, attacking anyone that messes with him so that the octopus can have him to himself.
The octopus sees Derek and Elfo play fighting and just mistakes it for real fighting.
Yeah.
I love the interactions, but I'm very glad they chose Elfo to be the one to be the audience's touch point with Derek for this episode, because that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and then they just the octopus kidnaps him, and then they just go and rescue him from the octopus, and that's it. It's just there's not a whole lot of just actual story there. It's more in terms of establishing the character more and informing his relationship with Bean. What it kind of reminds me of is that Simpsons episode where Lisa gives Ralph a Valentine.
I choose you.
Yeah, and because
in fairness,
for the most
that
part,
one's a lot funnier.
Yeah, but Ralph Wiggum is not a character that they typically spend a lot of time on. He's just there to kind of say these funny, strange things and sort of see Police Chief Wiggum kind of deal with him. And this is sort of one time where we kind of got to see a bit more from Ralph's perspective of someone who does have a difficult time existing in the world, and now has a girl expressed some interest in him, albeit out of sympathy, and him just kind of dealing with that and coming to the realization that she's not really all that into him. The bit where they're doing the play and he burns the Valentine in the in the fire, and you just you really start to kind of feel his pain, and finally we get to it at the end where Lisa says, sorry, I'm not actually wanting to be in love with you, but we could be friends. And it's just sort of, you see Ralph Wiggum in a different light after seeing that episode.
My favorite part of that episode is is
Look
when
at this, Lisa. You can pinpoint the exact moment when his heart breaks.
That's a great bit. That's a great line of dialogue. But my favorite part of that
We've all been
episode
there too.
is the science fair where Skinner walks over and he says, "All right, Ralph, present your project." And it's just a box of the 76, 80 Kenner Star Wars figures. And Skinner's like, "Chewbacca, they're all here. They're all my favorite." And Ralph just looks up and goes, "What's a diorama?" Can I tell you how many times I've done the "what's a diorama" thing?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a different episode, but yeah, good part.
That is a great Ralph Wiggum moment.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that was when Lisa had like a rival, another super smart girl who was an overachiever at school.
You're right.
They both make dioramas about the Telltale Heart, and they both wind up not winning.
Yeah, and Lisa like hides hers under the floor, and then just like the Telltale Heart, she hears the ticking, and her conscience can't bear it anymore. But yeah, and then in the end, it was all for naught because Ralph won instead, and they were both kind of just stood at the side. It all never worked out for either of us.
You are correct. Yes, I'm mixing two different episodes. Anyway,
but anyway, we can recount all of the Simpsons, but let's not.
And we have over the course of several years of doing this. The best part about this is the stuff with Lucy and Zog, and it leads to just sort of a greater narrative thing of they weren't afraid to mix up characters in the second part. Like, they broke up the trio just enough to have them interact with some other people. So here you have Elfo and Derek, and then by extension, Derek and Bean. And then on the other side, you have Lucy and Zog, who, again, these are characters that don't really interact with each other all that much.
It's the gout. You're not a real ruler in the medieval age. The true mark of a successful ruler in the Middle Ages is to have gout.
What's great about that is how he kept upping the ante. So he finally gets gout, and...
they haven't told you about the second phase of gout? Amputation.
And Zog is just crazed with competition. My only issue with this is that this cribs from the episode of The Simpsons a bit too much for me, where Homer decides he's going to be morbidly obese so that he can work from home.
A little different motivation there, but yeah, but there's like some actual accuracy to this stuff. Like, I know... Like in the medieval aristocracy, like it was considered like you did not eat until you were full. You ate until there was no food left, because if you were a noble, that was like your job. You had to like live life to the excess. So you would literally eat until you threw up, and then you would just go and eat back to eating again. And they wonder why the peasants revolted.
You're right, they are revolting. They stink on ice. Mel Brooks.
Chicken Run made that joke better. The chickens are revolting. Finally, something we agree on.
No. In all seriousness, the best version of that joke, I think, comes from Dragonheart. The peasants are revolting. They've always been revolting, lad, but now they're rebelling.
Also a good one.
That's really funny. All right. So, In Her Own Right is my favorite episode of the season.
It would be.
I mean, not for the misogyny aspect of it. Oh, women can't be into play. Shut up, Robert. I liked it because it deals with Bean's trauma. It deals with her anxiety. It deals with self-expression as a form of therapy. And, and the resolution to where, first of all, the whole idea of her writing a play, someone else taking credit for it, and then the thing be utterly mucked up. Boy, is that damn you Hollywood all over.
That's just Hollywood, period.
Yeah. But it's...
Can I also say... Lucy as the the writer's demon. That's God, I laughed, but boy, that hit way too close to home for me.
You are in fact a writer. But I love the resolution of like the king just not being able to deal with the play. It was very Hamlet.
You're all getting executed. I'm out of here.
And then he walks across. He realizes Bean's doing spoken word, and she's doing kind of a stream of consciousness, just vent about everything that's happened to her. And I'm like, and he hears it. He hears her truth, and it doesn't really matter if he agrees or disagrees with it. He's hearing her, which they don't have. They don't have a great relationship of him hearing her. It's very antagonistic where the communication's concerned. And
Zog, not a touchy-feely guy,
no.
and not to mention he's still dealing with his feelings regarding Dagmar.
Right.
So having to deal with Bean's feelings as well. It's just I'm not ready to talk about this, so I can't help you work through this. And it was kind of just at that moment where he was kind of finally able to understand her feelings a bit more.
Well, if he does have more of an overarching arc throughout several episodes, it's that he keeps trying to get rid of Dagmar. Like, he burns her portrait, he has her statues tossed in the river. He wants her erased so he doesn't have to think about it or deal with it. And that's not, A, healthy, and B, not at all what Bean's process is for dealing with this.
Right.
So that moment when he just kind of goes into their crappy knockoff of every stupid beatnik coffee house in the freaking world, and he hears what she does say, and he kind of applauds at the end, and they share a moment or two together, just starting to kind of improve their relationship a little bit and understanding where the other one is coming from a bit more. And then he stops the execution of everyone involved at the play, but not before their William Shakespeare lookalike gets beheaded.
So for all the reasons, it's so funny, just a very, very small personal aside. I've always joked about how, I kind of became a social worker for a variety of reasons, but I wish I had become successful when I was trying to get into Hollywood or doing some of the more creative things that are a part of my personality. But every time there's an episode like this in anything that we're covering, or there's a movie that deals with mental health, how I'm all over it and very excited and I want to talk about it. It's like, no, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I found my niche. It's fine. Everything else can just be a hobby. But I clearly have something about me. There's a magnet for mental health that's attractive to me. So I should stop fighting this is my only point.
But yeah, kind of Zog tries to just forcibly remove Dagmar from his life because, again, that's the kind of person he is, and it's just one way people try and deal with their feelings. But just burning the photo, or burning the portrait, throwing the statue in
from his memory.
Yeah, that's not going to heal the pain. That you only just kind of have to work through it, and that, especially for such a big betrayal.
Well, Zog's also not particularly. In Zog's defense, he's not really an insightful guy. He's got a lot of
most of his problems are solved by cleaving them with an axe.
Yeah, he's kind of id. He's very much just a self-gratification and the simplest solutions, and just sort of motivated by the first thought that comes to his head. It's not a lot, Bean's the more insightful one when she's not drowning in alcohol. But I said that I love this episode for all that it represented in terms of dealing with trauma and mental health and self-expression. You, Robert, kind of reacted like, "Oh, of course you did." But you've worked with me long enough to, if I can say those things, you'd have said it.
If coming out of that first season, if you had said, "Hey, Robert, guess what my favorite episode is?" It would have been this one. That would have been my guess, maybe, and I might have been. Again, in all fairness, I might have been wrong. I'm not I can't read your mind or anything. But there's a better than average. I feel like you got a better than average chance of guessing stuff like that in the after I've seen something like, okay, well, which of these is probably Mark's favorite?
So, what was your struggle with this episode? Because it didn't seem to tickle your sack the way it did mine.
I think they belabor a little bit too much over the play.
Are you talking about the inherent misogyny that they're kind of poking fun at, or just the plot line itself? I mean, it's not that long of an episode. Okay.
And I don't mean both individually, I mean both collectively. If they'd only, given 1 point and then kind of let it stand, Bean fumes for a little bit about not being allowed to work in the theater, and then we just kind of move on to them trying to get the play working and it not working because everybody wants credit. Sure, everyone could be an executive producer. Why not?
Have you seen the opening credits to Star Trek Discovery?
No, I haven't seen anything related to Star Trek
Red
Discovery.
Letter Media counted 21 producers.
Even better than that, neither one of you watched the BH 90210 reboot, but that's actually one of the running gags of that one, is that the entire cast came back, but one of the caveats had to be they all had to be named producers.
I'm surprised they didn't ask for writing credits, too.
Look, they want to get into the Producers Guild as well as the Actors Guild. What do you want?
Yeah. Dave, go ahead.
So there's that, and again, we spend a bit too long for my taste going from boy men suck to boy the creative process, the production of a creative material sucks, back to men suck, back to the play sucks, back to, well, boy, we can't let Zog see this because you're kind of mocking Zog, to, boy, a beatnik coffee house. I've never seen one of those before. It just treads so, and this is not a criticism of the episode. You asked what my problem was. This is my problem.
Yep.
It treads, it retreads a bit too much over the same beats for me. And it just tackles a lot of stuff I've already, like, I've seen it other places. I've seen it better other places. It just, again, it was, it's not that there's not a few funny lines. There's a few funny lines. You know, do you want the lead? Look, do you want the lead? Well, yes. Then you will give me the writing credit. Oh, all right. I stole it to begin with. I don't care. So Merkimer getting control of the crowd by doing the high-pitched pig squeal. And then for some reason it taking everyone like 5 minutes too long to realize, oh, that's the king.
The crown was a bit of a hint, guys.
You'd think. I don't know. This just, as far as the beats it hit and how it related to me, again, Bean dealing with her issues with her mother, and then and Zog kind of that part of the episode works for me. The other stuff, not so much. But that's in this instance, this is not necessarily an objective criticism. Apart from, again, a lot of it parts of this episode feel repetitive, but other than that, not a major criticism of the episode, just my experience with it.
Dave?
Yeah, it's like, other than the actual Bean working for her through her demons and Zog learning to appreciate that, most of the rest of the episode kind of felt like filler to me. Like, as for the whole women can't be in theater thing, I mean, historically that is true. But also, whenever you have be it a science fiction or a fantasy or even a history production, it always represents some of the things happening in society at the time, right?
Yeah.
So and that's fine. It's always as a reflection of sort of more current events or issues, because that's part of what art is supposed to do. It'd be like a medium to explore and discuss these ideas and to try and stimulate thought. Or at least that's what it should be, and if you're good at your job.
Yeah, I obviously I didn't have a problem with it, but I mean, this is kind of one of those to each his own. I don't think there are any major craft problems here. I mean, maybe there's a point to be had about they retread a little bit of the same territory a little too much, but I think leading to I think the whole thing is saved by the moment she has with Zog at the end.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was expecting more of the play to go on longer and for it to actually show more of this is how Bean views her father and his relationship with her mother in her mind, and for Zog to kind of pick up on that and then kind of realize, oh wait, this is what Bean is going through, and that sort of be his enlightenment moment. But instead they kind of went with the this you're the king, execute everyone, I'm out of here, and then we get the thing with Bean, but it still worked in the end. It's just I was expecting the play to have a bit more of a prominent role in the story.
I want to read this line from the development part of the production wiki. Groening has said the show has a definite feminist point of view. Well, yeah. I mean,
couldn't have guessed.
So these last two episodes are kind of a part one, part two of an overall story where basically, from out of utter left field, the Grand Vizier and whoever the religious lady, the one that grants the divorce,
the Druidess.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they did have their secret society in the first season. Just it didn't seem to actually be doing anything actively to undermine the crown.
Look, it seemed more like the Elks Club and less like the Masons.
Yeah, it seemed more like just an excuse to have an orgy, but.
Yeah, again, it felt okay. It felt more like the some kind of Elks Club as opposed to the Stonecutters who actually accomplish things.
So, long story short, you have this guy.
Stonecutters have a better theme song.
They've employed somebody from another part of the world.
Who keeps
which
the
is
metric system down? We do.
do.
We do.
I know this isn't I know this isn't the same thing, but were you sent here by the devil? No, good sir, I'm on the level. Monorail. All right.
That is, I mean,
Mono, no!
the only thing Conan O'Brien has done of any value to the world is that song.
So anyway, getting through this because we're running a little long here, and I want to get to the end. The overall story here is that the Grand Vizier and the Druidess have decided they're going to overthrow the king, and they're going.
Well, hang on, we don't know. That part's left unconfirmed.
They were going to shoot him with a gun.
We don't know that. We know they capitalized once he's shot. It is not confirmed that they were the ones plotting the assassination.
Okay.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Either way,
Right.
if we're going to really break this down, they pay a guy from a futuristic, steampunkish part of the world to drop a gun off, and it's mistaken for a dragon, so it's shot down. Bean ends up palling around with this guy and going to visit there. When she realizes the plot is afoot, she goes back to the castle, and in trying to tell them about it and deal with this gun, the gun goes off and it shoots Zog. Second episode, she's tried for having attempted to murder the king. She escaped.
She's tried for witchcraft.
Yeah, her, Elfo, and Lucy fall through the ground into the catacombs of the castle, which. And here's where, like, I like the story well enough, but it was kind of one of those, like, oh, here we go again with another fucking cliffhanger.
Oh, I forgot my favorite Derek line from Love Slimy Embrace. I was reminded of it here because there's a few bits of stuff that were kind of hinted at that there's something special under the castle in Dreamland.
Right, which goes back to the whole thing with Levo.
Yeah, and as we see the same symbol that Levo saw, as Elfo and Derek are kind of wandering through the catacombs, and they wind up crashing into a wall. Part of it falls over, and they look, and there's a bunch of
Vases.
no, idiot, they're amphorae.
Okay.
That's my
Sorry,
Derek
I didn't know
line.
that.
No, that's the Derek line.
Oh, right.
Because they are they're amphorous vases, which are a very specific type of vase, and just him saying no, stupid, they're amphorae. Like, you know what? Yes, I got that joke, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Derek.
So, real quick. So again, that's where the show leaves off. So they save Zog, or at least they got the bullet out of him.
He's so dead.
But he's lying. His fate is undetermined. The kingdom is run by proxy by the Vizier and the Druidess, with Derek as the puppet king. And now Bean and company are on the run, and the last thing they see is Dagmar with this music box that's shown up once or twice throughout the season.
And all of the troglodytes.
Yeah. So we still don't know what Levo thought was so valuable in the catacombs just yet. I guess that'll be revealed in part 3 or part 1 of season 2, however they're numbering this thing. Again, I liked it just fine. I like the idea of this is sort of the, this is kind of a medieval part of the world, and then that in another part of the world there's an actual, like, science and kind of a...
Science.
I was going to say, I believe it's pronounced science.
Yeah, that's one of the running gags. So let's just leave it there. Here's what I'll say. I was a little frustrated that we are still getting dribs and drabs of something that they've been dropping little seedlets of and then forgetting about momentarily of what's in this goddamn basement all season long. And I wish they'd just get to it already. And now I gotta wait again for it to... Well, it's just
hey, at least you're not watching Attack on Titan. Totally worth the wait, by the way.
Oh, I was going to say, how dare you, but thank you for saving it. No, I am occasionally tempted to get Mark to try and watch Attack on Titan, but Mark's a giant weenie about stuff like that.
I am a total horror wuss too, and I got through that show. You'll be fine.
Mark would get through it, then he'd complain about everything, and by the time we get to the end of the most recent season, he'd be in tears because he'd be empathizing too hard with all the shared trauma.
I feel like I should call you a jerk for that, but I just don't have it in me right now.
Well, again, look, if you think I'm wrong, tell me and I'll apologize.
So,
if only the show had a likable protagonist. Anyway, that's a different podcast.
Hey. How dare you say that about Armin?
Hey, so
touche, sir, touche.
So back to Disenchantment. I'm going to pick up the ball and run here.
Okay. These last two episodes, Okay, I was just about to say I had a minor epiphany. The stuff whatever juice is in those amphorae, what's his face? Derek did give a little of that to the very tiny one-eyed squid that then the next day is giant.
Yeah, it grew exponentially.
So I imagine that's what the elves are after for whatever reason. This means of growing larger. Again, whatever that happens to be in particular, I imagine we'll find out later. But I think that's what the elves are after. Like, we used to be large, and then we were shrunk by some magical curse, and now this will let us reclaim our rightful place as the masters of the land. I don't know, something like that.
Maybe. Kind of wish they'd just get to it already.
I don't necessarily disagree. Okay, you said you liked the notion that we have, Dreamland, where it's, kind of high fantasy-ish. And then there's Steamland, where we have the steampunk, no, this is not. I am not, okay with this. This annoys me greatly.
Why?
Well, the internet kind of ruined steampunk.
Partially, yes. Partially, I think steampunk is overplayed. Partially, I know too much about science to go along with all the stuff they're saying it can do.
Ugh, this old hat.
Hey, I'm not going into detail. Just saying. Okay, look, you asked me my opinion. This is my perspective.
Compared to the technology level of Dreamland, yeah, like the science is pretty much at magic levels.
It bothers me a little bit that because I like we're now gonna get we have Steamland, we're gonna get Electric Land, and then that will be at war with Nuclear Land, where everything's powered by nuclear power instead of fossil fuels, and then there's
I doubt that. I mean, they already have electricity in Steamland.
Yeah, they do. Okay, so there'll be like, hey, there's going to be a different town for each source of power, and then there's going to be Digital Land where everyone's actually uploaded themselves to an extremely localized internet and don't actually have bodies. And no, stop it. This is stupid.
I'm pretty doubtful they'd go that far. That would kind of just dilute the premise of the show.
Rob is giving himself to one of those rare moments of exaggeration.
I wish I was. Point being, I tend to really dislike that. I don't mind each place having stuff that makes it unique, but you have one area that is like, hey, full on steampunk. Industrial Revolution, and then not that far away you have Dreamland without running water. Okay, this is just too much. It's just too stupid. I can't do it. That said, what they use that to accomplish is pretty great. When the gun goes off and shoots Zog, and the combination of opportunism and ineptitude by everyone around him. That leads to Derek being crowned king, but since he's too young to rule, his guardian is, and Avdol slipped his name in as guardian if necessary when Una and Zog divorced. Like, that stuff all kind of works for me, and the trial of Tiabini is hilarious. I'm not a witch. Oh, but you've been to hell. Well, yeah. And you put your name down in the devil's book. Well, just so I could get through the gate. Like, Elfo's testimony is the most... As a guy who's had a lot of laughs, and equal parts laughs and outrage at witch trials because they're so profoundly stupid, as is the nature of all guilty until proven innocent, sort of like pseudo-jurisprudence, it's just profoundly stupid. It's an unbelievably bad way to navigate life. Elfo getting up there and saying and just basically condemning her while trying to help. And, Lucy at one point going, "Objection, Your Honor, permission to punch the witness in the face." I half expected him to allow it, but he overrules it. It does kind of lead to a genuinely heartfelt moment between Zog and Derek, where Derek goes in and goes, "I don't know what I'm doing for this," and Zog's response is, "Yeah, me too, kid." And it sucks when you have to render a judgment, because sometimes the fairest option means everyone feels screwed, and you're just the bad guy. And which is, again, it's not, earth-shatteringly, it doesn't, alter your perspective on reality, but it's a somewhat profound assessment. Because this is a guy who doesn't really want the crown. He does, as we've talked about, this is not what he is suited for. So his perspective on being king and what it means from a practical standpoint is very different from, people who have aspired to it their whole lives. And again, it's a little bit poignant and just a touch, again, nothing deeply profound, but there is some profundity to it. And there's a few laughs like, oh, what's that light opening above my bed? That big tunnel of light opening. Oh, boy. That's all really great. Bean going back to take the bullet out, which, oh, God, look. I promised I wouldn't do my Mr. Wizard thing. But,
well, we'll get to Mr. Wizard, don't worry.
Sorcero, we know that rats are germ magnets, so what could be healthier than surrounding the king with rats?
Yeah.
It was genuinely funny.
Oh yeah, there is funny stuff. But removing a bullet from someone is a complicated and intricate process, and you can't just do it with a dagger you pulled out of your ass.
Robert, they hit a switch and a stairway appeared to hell. I mean, come on.
Yeah, which was somehow less insulting to my intelligence than this.
You're a weird person.
I am deeply aware of that.
Okay.
Do I have to break out that actor playing Samuel Tarly quote again?
No, go for it.
Okay. So, apologies to the actor in question, plays Samuel Tarly. She's like, someone said to me that they couldn't believe after all that time walking around in, north of the wall that I was still fat. And I said to them, there are dragons and ice zombies in this show, and that was the most unbelievable thing you could think of?
Yes. The answer should just be with a straight face, yes. So again, but it was just Derek's kind of vacillating over whether or not she's guilty, and he's not really sure, and he's kind of telling off Doll, and I don't think she did it. I don't think she tried to kill our father, and they go in to see him, and she's just removed the bullet, but she's standing over his body with a bloody knife. Just again, it's kind of an old gag in that respect, but it works.
Yeah. There's no show of people actually talk and take a minute to understand context, but why would you do that? There's a plot to move forward here. David, what was your thoughts on these last two episodes, and if you want to speak to the specificity of Steampunk Land?
Okay, sure. It's like, this time I have notes, so I won't forget anything. I'm learning. Okay, yeah, so I kind of like how they've set up, you have Steamland, which is more like a semi-modern society, especially in comparison to Dreamland, which I think they can use for a lot of comparisons and criticisms. And you also have that sort of counterbalanced by Maru, which is more like a country of magic. So you kind of have the Kingdom of Magic, the Kingdom of Technology, and Dreamland in between the two, which is basically just, medieval fantasy land. And so you have sort of how, you can see how Bean really takes quite quickly to the science.
Yeah.
And she's this is all sorcery. We must fear and mistrust it. And she's like, oh wait, I can do this stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if, as the show goes on, we kind of see her, learning a bit more about that stuff. And we do see that where she sort of learns about infection and how to actually remove a bullet. Though I'm not quite sure how she learned what a bullet was at the time. But anyway, we'll just run with that.
Yeah, she has. At no point does she actually get an explanation about what the gun is.
Yeah, I mean, okay, you can figure out that, someone shot at her when she was in Steamland, so she kind of knows this is a weapon, that's, and probably that it shoots something out of it. That it is called a bullet, I don't think was ever mentioned, but, oh well, for brevity, it's just easy, we'll just go with that. Yeah, again, I kind of like the historical allusions to, how the sort of slightly off logic was applied to things, especially medicine. Yeah, the whole... rats attract disease, so if we put rats next to a diseased person, they'll suck the disease out of them. Again, it kind of makes sense, but we know
if you're
better.
really stupid, it makes sense. If you genuinely don't know any better, it makes sense.
Yeah, but we've kind of already worked out that isn't how it works. Just like the Earth being round. But anyway, so that is sort of aspect with the medicine, and also just sort of being sort of looked on as a witch. It was like the original word witch comes from the word wit, like the idea of like you were a witch if you were like a woman that showed uncharacteristic signs of intelligence for the time. So if you were a bit too smart for your own good in the eyes of the society back then, which was basically you did anything other than
I'll
traditional
say for
girl
you,
stuff.
if you was an uppity broad.
Basically, or just showed a bit too much intelligence. And, like how could a woman know these things? Women don't have the brains for that. Then obviously you must be a witch. Must have gotten that knowledge from a deal with the devil. So
great way of making sure a certain part of your citizenship remains second class.
Yeah. So. Anyway, so so there is a bit of like you can see how they could easily spin Bean into being a witch, because she is pretty smart and driven and isn't afraid to speak up when she sees things that don't make sense, and back in the day that would have made you a witch in some places, and you would have been tried for it. So that's neat. So here in terms of like Derek, like I think we kind of really start to see him coming into his own a bit more. Like we actually. Prior to this, he's just kind of been the goofy, spoiled younger brother who really doesn't have any idea of what's going on. And now we can sort of see him, struggling with this new position and actually trying to do things fairly well. Like you can kind of see that he's not just an incompetent stooge. He is trying to understand things, try to think things through. Like he does not leap to judgment just because that's what the path that has been laid in front of him is. He questions like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't quite make sense, or that's not something my sister would do. And it was only when he goes into the room and sees Bean, with the knife looking like it has stabbed Zog, does he, jump to, execute her. And, that's a fair enough assumption given the evidence in front of him. Especially considering, he doesn't know about, bullets and medicine and all of that stuff, So I think I think we will probably see more of Derek in the future sort of come into his own as a future ruler, or at the very least competent in his own right. And kind of like sort of my final thought here is, it's good that they have answered some of the questions from the previous season. Who are the mysterious people working in the background? And the main problem is like the show, like it answers questions, but now we have a whole bunch of new questions like, what is Dagmar still up to? What are all these things that she has done to the kingdom with, like putting hidden signs and stuff? And we've got these mole people now, or whatever they're called, that apparently she's connected to. I didn't catch if Steamland was paid to assassinate Zog, but apparently it seems
I believe they were just paid to drop off the weapon. I believe that's the line of dialogue that's given. Is they were paid to deliver something to a specific individual, and that's all we know.
Yeah, he was the setup. He was flying his Zeppelin over Dreamland. He was supposed to literally drop the weapon at a drop zone. It all went to shit when Bean shot him down because she thought it was a dragon.
Okay, in fairness, his airship does look like a dragon.
Yeah, he probably should have figured that first. But so it's just sort of like, well, now
you
what?
Told me
what
that
role
canvas was arrow-proof.
So what role does Steamland, or this faction within Steamland, play in like the future roles? Why are they out to disrupt things in Dreamland? Because it seems like they're pretty well informed over who's who and what's going on. So I assume all these questions to be answered and more given to us in season 3 or season 2, part 1, whatever they do.
Yeah, it was renewed for at least the second season, which is supposed to come out. It's 20 episodes. I don't know if they're going to break it up like they did this one.
I think they're going to do the same thing with 10 and 10.
Either way, that's what this was supposed to be. This was what we've had from Disenchantment so far is season 1 broken up into 2 parts. Overall, I liked part 2 more than part 1. I think the show kind of shifts into second gear in part 2. There's more interesting stuff going on, more interesting character relationships and interactions.
The world's more fleshed out.
Yeah, I can only take, doing a parody of Game of Thrones with Simpsons characters for so long before I start to get bored.
Don't forget the Keebler elves.
So I'm glad they turned a page and were like, okay, now that we've kind of done that, we've scratched that itch creatively, we can go on and tell interesting stories with these characters we've created. So part 2 worked for me. Robert, you and I kind of talked offline, and you said that it didn't work nearly as well for you. You want to speak to that?
I didn't find it as amusing as I did season 1, which is largely down to personal taste. Again, I don't have a tremendous amount of craft to kind of talk about, apart from some of the stuff we already have. I think a lot of my other problem comes down to narrative structure of this season. You get, again, 3 seasons that wrap up what happened at the end, 3 episodes rather, that wrap up what happened at the end of the previous season. Then we transition to, again, 3 or 4 that just kind of are the characters in the world, which are largely successful. Then the last couple that are ones that kind of go back to advancing plot. For me, what worked about the first season so well was, again, character introduction, madcap humor, and then they kind of hit you out of left field with actual character development and emotions. Here, the emotional stuff that we get is a bit at the front, to the extent that we do. Then it goes to get back towards the humor, and then the way it closes is just not... I don't think it closes as strong on the character standpoint. And for as much kind of crazy stuff as took place over the last 2 episodes, it was largely devoid of the kind of emotional content, or maybe it just was for me. Again, I can't speak to everyone. But I didn't get, an emotional kind of gut punch, and I think if Zog had actually died, we would have gotten there.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, because for me, the gut wrench was him being shot, and especially the way that it was animated.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't die, then she gets the bullet out of him, and then it's like, oh, they don't want to kill one of their babies, this seems cheap to me, and then it's like largely forgotten so that they can pay off the what's in the catacombs storyline, or at least restart it. I'm fine with them advancing the what's under Dreamland kind of scenario. I'm okay with that. I really am.
But again, there was a real lack of emotional resonance to the final couple of episodes.
I kind of wish they had just ended with Zog being shot.
I'm kind of with you there, actually. If that had been where we ended the season, and we just don't know what happens next, again, that would have worked for me quite well, actually, as far as cliffhangers go.
Mm-hmm. Maybe another episode kind of dealing with Lucy stuff in the bar, sort of give him his own episode, because everyone kind of has a turn here in that 5-episode arc. So maybe, one more episode that just deals with Lucy, so that way you end with the episode where Zog gets shot. And then I think we're okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could even have Lucy's episode be... Or an episode where they go into the catacombs and find out a little bit more than what they have right now.
Yeah.
And so that thread is still out there, but they make it known that, yeah, we remember this stuff, it's not gone. But our big cliffhanger is... Because, in all fairness, if you start Season 3 with the same episode that ends Season 2, I think that's a great first episode.
Agreed. I think it's a shitty season finale. I think it's a great season opener.
So there's that, and again, largely I think that's why it doesn't work for me quite as well as Season 1 did, but a lot of that's going to be down to personal preference, and on the whole, it's still a very funny, very engaging show.
Dave, I'll let you have the last word, and then we'll do plugs and get out of here.
Okay, kind of not much else to add to that. It's overall, I think the show's developing like really well. The characters are becoming more fleshed out. The world is becoming more fleshed out. Everyone seems to have a better idea of what they're doing. Yeah, I can see what you're getting at with it being not the best end point for the season, but it still kind of leaves you wondering what's happening next. And I do quite like that they're mixing up sort of the serialized story with some standalone stuff to sort of help break up the tension and again give some time to flesh out the characters and the world a bit more.
Okay. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm anxious to see what we get in 2020, 2021. So we'll cover it when that happens, unless a meteor hits the planet, and then I won't have a podcast anymore. It's going to be hard to podcast if I'm floating out in space.
You know what? I have complete faith in you being able to do it.
I'll find a way.
If anyone can, Mark, it's you.
This is true. All right, next week we've got Gotham by Gaslight, the book, then the movie, the animated movie that came out, I believe, last year. It's currently on DC Universe. Alexis and I will talk about it, and we'll have talked about the book by that point on source material. Jesse and I will be reviewing Hell Yeah, Welcome Home. And then Jesse, Pat, and I will be reviewing BH 90210. And then on October 5th, Pat and I will maybe, probably could be doing alternative coverage for UFC 243. Bobby Knuckles, Sir Robert of Knuckles, Whitaker versus Adesanya. So, or, if he's not available, then I guess I'll just be watching it and there'll be no alternative coverage. You can check out what's in the archives from this past week. We finally finished up Onslaught. All 4 parts of Onslaught are in the books. We reviewed
Onslaught.
Reviewed Rambo: Last Blood, and we eviscerated the critics. We are making film criticism great again on Damn You Hollywood.
Darn right we are.
Myself and Jesse Starcher reviewed Korn the Nothing. Go ahead and give that a shot, and that's it. We did a whole bunch of shows in the month of... Oh, my episode of Talking Polynix dropped today. So if you can find Talking Polynix, that's Nicks, Nick, Nickelodeon, Dick. Talking Polynix on whatever podcast platform you're on, you can Spotify, Apple, whatever. Go ahead and check that out. You can listen to me do, occasionally we'll talk, very, very little, in reference to what piece of art we're happen to be discussing on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Where it's politically related, we'll bring it up. We don't do a politics-specific show on here because I don't want to. But I took...
The one thing Mark does not want to have a podcast about.
But the offer was put out to me. They said, he was looking for guests in one of the Facebook groups. And I said, you know what? I can do this for about an hour once. And he was very gracious, and he let me on, and we talked about Andrew Yang, the universal basic income. We talked about gun control and mental illness. And then we talked about what needs to happen to stem the tide of people dealing with mental illness. We talked about reopening state hospitals, that sort of thing. We talked about climate change. So
blame Kennedy. Look, blame JFK for the state of mental health in this mental health facilities in this country.
And we also talked about getting the 18 to 30 age bracket to go out and vote, which they don't, and that's why Democrats lose elections. So it was a pretty.
I thought it was because their platform was terrible.
Nope.
I joke. Look, jokes aside. Neither party has a very viable political platform right now.
Right, but the old people vote, and they tend to vote right. So,
True.
As opposed to left. So anyway, my point is, if you're interested in hearing me talk long form about some things that I'm passionate about in terms of politics, check out Talking Polynix. He does a pretty good job of eliciting conversation from us podcasters. He's about 10 episodes in right now. It's pretty good, if you're interested in that sort of thing. I'll be on Biodocs this week. This will be a little bit different for me. This guy interviews podcasters and just kind of talks about how they got to be where they are. They have, interesting stories to tell. So I'll probably talk about how I became a social worker, which is something I do in bits and pieces relative to the discussion that we're having. This will be a long-form biographical podcast. This is probably going to be the greatest thing I've ever done for me because I get to talk about me. You can't see it right now, but I'm gently caressing my torso and saying me. It's all about me. I'm very excited about this.
I look forward to you talking about how you tried to become a pro wrestler.
Yeah, I'll have to throw that in there, too. I'm going to have to clean that story up a bit.
I tried to get into pro wrestling. Whoa. This is a family-friendly show. Okay, long story short, it didn't work out.
So go ahead and check all that stuff out. David, you want to plug anything real quick?
Nope. Don't really have anything to plug right now. Life's too busy for pluggable stuff right now.
Okay. Well, I don't know when we'll see you again on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, but you're always welcomed. Robert, go ahead and talk about your MMA podcast and all the stuff you're doing with me.
All right, Sundays I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. This past week, Jeff Harris and I got together. We reviewed the UFC's Mexico City card, which was a somewhat interesting disaster.
It was a beautiful disaster.
We previewed the UFC's Denmark card, which will take place on Saturday, about which the less said the better right now.
And then after that, he's going to do coverage for Errol Spence versus Sean Porter.
I have not committed to that. You keep trying to sell me on that, and I'm uncertain about what I'll be doing with my Saturday evening. I'll say this: if I am not doing anything else, I might record something and upload it for you.
Okay.
This Saturday in the morning, I believe the first prelim for this event starts at 11 Eastern. That's 11 a.m. I will have coverage of UFC on ESPN Plus 18. Again, they'll be in Denmark. It's a card. It's got a lot of the European regulars. It exists. Hopefully it's good, and hopefully in practice it's really good. Because on paper,
Okay.
And again, Sunday we'll be reviewing that and previewing UFC 243, which I am so psyched for. Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya is the two best middleweights in the world. Robert Whittaker, perpetually underappreciated, had what should have been the fight of the year for 2018, but MMA fans suck.
Let me tell you about this fight for Robert Winfree. It got him so excited that he actually used the phrase on a podcast. You can find it, hot diggity. It was adorable, and I encourage him to use that in the future.
Well, look. I tried. What was the one you gave me a lot of crap for saying? I think I called something baller once.
Yeah.
And you just
calm that shit down, honky.
And yeah, you just about I could feel the whiplash from your head turning around from across the country. I'm trying to find an appropriate expression.
Hot diggity works for you, Cracker, okay? Don't be using no fucking baller, okay?
Dude, you're almost as white as I am.
I'm not the one saying baller.
Fair enough. Wait, yes you are.
I say dope.
Fair enough. So, anyway, point being, I will be covering that in a couple of weeks. We'll have a preview of it this Sunday when I wax lyrical and poetic about this clash of titans. So tune in for that. There is no movie review this Tuesday. In the archives, you can find Mark and I talking about Rambo Last Blood. We tear apart the movie a little bit because parts of it deserve it. And then we eviscerate critics for being just so damn bad at their jobs.
Yeah. All right, folks, we hope you've appreciated this look back at part 2 of Disenchantment. For Robert Winfree, David Wright, be well, be safe, and behave.